Welcome to the way of the warrior, magic and honor. Kensei is a miniature war game set in feudal Japan and takes place in a fantasy world called Myukai. In this video, we will see the Kensei game system in action in a very simplified way. Download the rulebook from Zenit Miniatures website for a more detailed explanation. During this sample game, the Sohei clan, the yellow monk warriors on the right, will try to eradicate the evil that the Kuroite, demons and specters from beyond hell bring. Battles in Kensei are divided into turns and usually finish at the end of the 5th turn. There are no differentiated turns for each player. Both play at the same time during the whole game. Once deployment has ended, in which players place their units one after another in an alternate manner, the first turn starts. Each turn is divided into 3 phases: maintenance phase, initiative and activation. During the maintenance phase, players will remove all activated units, stunned and fleeing markers from one of their troops. As it's the first turn, there are no markers to remove. Also, all cards players had in their hands are discarded and they draw 4 new cards from their command deck. The command deck has a series of cards with values ranging from 0 to 3 with which you can carry out one of these actions during the game. Discard a card of any value to re-roll a die of a roll of yours, or also to force opponent to re-roll a die of a roll of his. You may also add a card value to a die of a roll you just made. And finally, you can try to steal the turn's initiative from your opponent by means of a command duel. However, we will see this further on. During the initiative phase, both players roll a 6-sided die. Whoever obtains the highest number starts with this turn's initiative. The loser may declare a command duel to try to steal it at any moment during the activation phase. The Kuroite player wins the initiative. The activation phase begins. Now it's time for your army's troops to act. Both players activate their troops one by one, which we will call active units, and these will be the ones getting orders. The rest of the troops will be reactive units and can only get orders if they are attacked by the enemy. The player with initiative decides which player goes first before activating each new pair of units. In this case, the Kuroite player decides to play first and activates the Yurei Spectres with Naginata unit. The Sohei player indicates that he activates his Samurai with Katana unit immediately after. Next, both players must make an order roll to see if the troop gets 1 or 2 orders. They roll a 6-sided die and add the initiative of their active units to the result. If the result is 4 or more, they get 2 orders, otherwise they only get 1. Both units are elite and their initiative is 2. Therefore, they both get 2 orders for this activation. Both players will alternate using their orders, provided that one of their troops is forced to react, moment in which one of the obtained orders must be used in favor of such reaction. As the Kuroite player activated first, he will also be the first one to take action. He uses an order to move his unit 10 centimeters, which is the movement attribute of the infantry unit. Once the order is carried out, remove one of the order markers as a reminder. Now it's the Sohei player's turn, who checks that he cannot nor should react with any of his troops, so he uses a move order as his first order. In Kensei there is no limitation to movement. Troops can change their formation during such movement and move up to their maximum attribute, even if they turn around when doing so, always provided that they don't exceed their maximum allowed movement and end their movement in a valid formation. The only limitations are that all miniatures must be facing the front and cannot run backwards. The Kuroite player mustn't react either, so he uses his second order also to move. Likewise, the Sohei player will also move, getting closer to the enemy. There are 2 types of orders, action and reaction. Action orders can only be assigned to active troops and are used to carry out actions that do not depend on the enemy. This is movement, charging, combat, etc. Reaction orders can be assigned to both active and reactive troops and are used as a response to an enemy action, such as responding an attack or fleeing when a troop is charged upon. Once both players have used their orders, each troop that has received an order, either an action or a reaction order, gets an activated unit marker, indicating that it cannot be activated again until next turn. Now that both players have used all their orders, it's time to activate 2 new units. But the Soho player has a plan and needs initiative, therefore he challenges the undead player to a command duel trying to steal it from him. The challenger puts 1 or more cards on the table facing down, and the challenged player must answer with at least 1 card. Cards are revealed, and the player who bet the highest value wins the initiative until the end of turn, or until another player steals it again. The Soho player bets the highest amount, so he wins the initiative. The Kuroite player must wait until new units are activated to declare a command duel. Cards used in this duel are placed on the discard pile. The Soho player decides that he will play first for this activation, and chooses his non-cavalry as active unit. His opponent chooses his archers, fearing that the cavalry might target them. Remember that you cannot activate a troop that has an activated unit marker on it. Both players make the order roll as with previous activated units, and as we will do each time we activate a troop. Both units once again obtain 2 orders, and players place markers as reminders. As this time the Soho player activated first, he is also the first to take action. He declares a movement order and moves his cavalry 15 centimeters, his mounted troops movement attribute, getting close to the hellish units. He removes an order marker to remind him that an order has already been used. These markers, although not mandatory, are very useful for the game's development. The undead player declares a shooting order against a cavalry unit. He must make 2 rolls. The first one is the shooting roll to see how many shots hit the target. For this roll we take as many dice as the troop's ranged attack attribute. In this case they are warriors and have an attribute of 2. After, we add 1 die for each miniature on the front, and that has a line of sight with the target. Therefore, 5 dice are added. The total dice to be rolled are 7, and each one must roll a 4 or more to be considered a hit. There are other modifiers depending on the type of weapon, distance, etc. that we will ignore for this example. The Kuroite player obtains 3 hits. Put these dice to one side as they are the ones to be used for the next roll. The second roll is called a wound roll and is made to find out the total wounds that the target suffers. Roll as many dice as hits obtained in the previous roll, each roll of 5 or more being considered a direct wound. 2 of the rolled dice exceed that difficulty, and as being an elite unit with a wound attribute of 2, it suffers a casualty. The player causing the casualty will indicate which miniature on the front is removed, starting from the nearest to the line of shot. After making the shot, the undead player removes 1 of his order markers as a reminder. The Soho player now uses his second order and declares a charge against the Kuroite samurai with katana. The unit being charged upon is forced to react and must use 1 of the obtained orders for this reaction. However, it could react the same even though it hadn't gotten used orders. Being one of the reactive units, it can only get a reaction order. He decides to withstand the charge and fight. The player rolls a 6-sided die before charging, adds the result to his movement attribute, and this is the maximum movement in centimeters that he can make. If the enemy troop is within this distance, the charge will take place and you may move your miniatures until contact with the enemy miniatures. Afterwards, a hand-to-hand combat will be carried out. Only miniatures on the front line of the charging unit can enter hand-to-hand combat. Place the miniatures completely facing on one of their sides. Charging implies a combat that will be carried out immediately. The system is very similar to that of ranged attacks, but both players make the rolls at the same time. First a hit roll and the second a wound roll. The cavalry unit rolls 7 combat dice. It has an attack attribute of 3, 2 miniatures in combat, and adds 2 more dice because of the charge. The undead unit rolls 5 dice. Their attack attribute is of 3, but loses 1 die as they are reacting. Also, it has 3 miniatures in combat, the 2 facing the cavalry and the 1 that touches its corner. They make their rolls, and each result of 4 or more is considered a hit. Put those dice aside to use them later on the wound roll. Remember that after each roll you could use your command cards to modify the result or re-roll one of the die. The undead player gets 2 hits and the Shohei player gets 5. The difficulty to wound is of 4 or more. However, the cavalry is way better protected, so the undead player needs 5s or more. In a hand-to-hand damage roll, each die counts. Results of 1 are considered a fumble and have no effect at all. A die with a result lower than the set difficulty implies stunning the enemy unit. A troop gets an extra wound for each 2 stacked stuns, removing the received stun unit markers. Any result equal or higher than the set difficulty is considered a direct wound. The Kuroite player has obtained a 1 and a 2. The 1 is ignored and the 2 is a stun for the cavalry. The Shohei player obtains 4 dice with a lower result than the difficulty. This means 4 stuns, that become 2 wounds for the enemy. The cavalry unit suffers no casualties. The undead samurai unit has a wound attribute of 1, so they suffer 2 casualties on getting 2 wounds. In kensei, the miniatures removed as casualties are indicated by the player that causes them. Trying to break the formation and dividing the enemy unit is very important due to negative modifiers, so this will be your target when choosing which miniatures will be removed. The player that won the combat, this is the player with less casualties, is the first to choose which miniatures his opponent should remove, starting with those in close combat and then carrying on with the rest of the unit. After the first clash, units mix all together in a chaotic combat. Once all casualties are removed, the unit that hasn't fled can make an extra movement called melee movement. Each miniature not in hand-to-hand combat can move up to 3 centimeters or turn face to front, always trying to recover formation or reach new enemy miniatures to entangle in combat. This way, the position of the troops in battle is very important and would produce negative and positive modifiers, and each miniature has a strategic importance. Once combat is finished, we must check that no orders are left to assign to activated units. The Shohei player used his second order on the charge. The undead player used his second order reacting with the samurai unit. So as you can see, attacking enemy reactive units makes them lose active orders and doesn't let them do all they would like to. As no orders are left, all units that got any kind of order is marked as an activated unit. In this case, the Shohei cavalry and the archers, as well as the Kuroite samurai. None of these can be activated again until next turn. Now we will carry on with the rest of the turn, activating 2 new units and repeating the previous steps, but with this we have presented the general mechanics of kensei and an approach to the activation, combat and shooting systems. You will surely have more questions than answers, and to solve them download the rulebook for free from Zenit Miniatures website and contact us with any suggestion. Thanks for staying with us, and now it's time for you to follow your own path and lead your army.